What is going on, guys? Kyle here with Blacklisted Voice, episode 38. Kelsey from Repair, Perform, Recover is joining us today. How's it going, Kelsey?
Going good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Do you want to do a little intro for yourself, or?
Yeah, I am a doctor of physical therapy. Graduated from Georgia State in 2018. That's what led me to Atlanta, at least. And alongside of being a physical therapist, I'm also, I'd like to say, just a health coach. I do a little bit of everything: PT, personal training, nutrition coaching, gymnastics coaching, like just a little bit of everything to keep people healthy and moving well. So
Yeah, for sure. And you have a gymnastics background as well?
yes. So athletically, I did gymnastics for just about 20 years. I was fortunate enough to compete at the collegiate level, competed for Auburn University. So War Eagle for any Auburn folks listening.
Yeah.
And that was, a dream come true. That was my goal, was to compete at the college level. And throughout my gymnastics career, though, I actually was a coach. I was and still am a gym rat. And as soon as I was old enough to coach, I did. So I was, I think, 13, and I just started jumping in on like the mom and tot classes. I was coaching whatever they would let me coach. And I did it all the way through college and even physical therapy school too. And so that's a big part of what I actually do now within my PT practice, is work with a lot of gymnasts. So
Yeah. Yeah. If you guys ever head over to Kelsey's Instagram, you will definitely see a lot of gymnasts on her feed. So
yeah, I grew up as an athlete with no resources to anything injury prevention, and I was the gymnast that was hurt literally all the time. And so I have lots of them because I had nothing. And so I'm like, I'm going to give back as much as I can to at least the gymnastics community when it comes to how to keep young bodies healthy for as long as possible.
For sure. Yeah. It seems like the gymnastics community is almost like starting to catch on what kind of like the CrossFit community started to push like a couple of years ago, as far as like taking care of the body and stuff. I mean, physical therapists probably knew this, but it started to get seemed like it started to get a little bit more mainstream, or like kind of out there, as CrossFit started to gain popularity.
Yeah. And thankfully other healthcare providers have also started to kind of get out on social media and like have some sort of hey, like things need to change. It's actually really cool to see whenever I go into a new gymnastics facility, one of the first things I look for is, do they have weights? And most of the time they don't. And I will inform either the coach or the owner and be like, hey, like, step one of recommendation is get some dumbbells, get some kettlebells, get some bands. Like, you don't need to know what to do with them, just get them. And it's really cool seeing the gyms that like lean into like more of the strength side of conditioning, like CrossFit does. They actually find that their athletes end up being a lot healthier. And it's really cool to see, because I mean, growing up, we didn't touch weights. I was fortunate enough to be in a gym when I was younger that like we would do kettlebell swings and Turkish get-ups and stuff, but like it's all body weight. And when you train a body weight sport, that doesn't keep you strong. So
like for individuals, we have a couple of like former gymnasts that might listen to this, but like you would say like probably the biggest thing that you see discrepancy wise from when you were trained to now is the weights and like what they're able to do for some of these younger individuals.
I know for myself, transitioning from when I retired from gymnastics and then a few years later finding CrossFit myself, my legs were so weak. I mean, I could put anything over my head. And I could barely squat my body weight. I mean, it was horrible. And then when I look back on it, I'm like, oh, maybe that's why I had ankle problems literally my whole gymnastics career. And that is a big hole that I tend to find in athletes I work with now, is you see the back pain, the hip pain, even shoulder pain. And a lot of it is tied to they're just lacking resistance training to kind of create full body tension to receive load. So
and you've seen like a pretty good carryover into some of the individuals that you're working with right now. It seems like you work with a little bit younger athletes, or
Yeah, my age range I work with is, I think right now between like 8 years old, and my oldest is going to be a senior in high school.
Okay.
And I definitely see the carryover the most in that like 10 to 15. If
Okay.
you start teaching them a squat, and if you start teaching them a deadlift, and you start teaching them a press, and not with a barbell, but like with a dumbbell or a kettlebell or a
Yeah.
sandbag, all of a sudden that just carries over into their growing bodies being able to hold tension
Yeah.
while they're growing, which is then going to just lead them to one day be like probably like CrossFit Games athletes, and they don't even know it. So
Right. Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Setting themselves up for success early.
Right. I don't
Yeah.
tell them that, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, these are going to be animals.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You have the hardest part of the sport down perfectly.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So do you start to see, like, teaching them these things, do you start to see their like power production improve as well? So like the movements that they're able to do, like just express themselves a little bit better?
Yeah. This is a non-gymnast scenario, but I have a
Yeah.
youth basketball player I work with right now.
Okay.
And also a soccer and volleyball player, all in that age window I mentioned. And all three of them their parents came to me saying, we want them to get stronger, but we need them to have more power on the
Mhm.
court or more power on the field. And I think in their brains, they envision doing a bunch of like vertical jumps and doing a bunch of like
Yeah.
jumping things to create more explosive movements.
Yeah.
And I let them know, I go, okay, like we can do that, but just know that the things that we're going to be doing in the gym are not going to look like power output movements, but they're going to be increasing their power output. So
Yeah.
heavy farmers carries, heavy sleds,
That's
heavy
sweet.
bench press. I mean, just like literally locking them into like, I can't move this weight, but I did just move that weight. And then you
Yeah.
unload them, and then they freaking jump across the room, and their parents are like, oh,
Oh, sweet.
that works. And
Yeah.
then they
Yeah.
do see carryover when they're playing their actual sport, and have been getting good feedback from that. So that's been cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Um, So like in regards to your practice then, like, so speaking from personal experience, like when I
Mhm.
start to kind of teach or like coach an athlete that's not necessarily a CrossFitter, like maybe it's like a military individual or somebody who's got like some endurance goals,
Mhm.
I'll be able to like study that aspect of whatever it is they're doing, and then actually take components of that and then carry it over into like the CrossFit sport. Do you kind of see that in regards to like treating people as well? So like treating a gymnast, you can carry that over into something that's going on with like one of your basketball players or CrossFitters or something along those lines.
Yeah. It's funny. My soccer player, she hates it when I give her heavy farmer's carry because she never uses her arms when she's playing soccer, right?
Right.
But it's been really, really cool to see the carryover of when I make her do something she doesn't like. CrossFitters are going to relate to this. She all of a sudden gets really, really good at the things she's naturally good at.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a way to like use your nervous system against you, but for you at the same time,
Right.
where you're training that like the muscle groups you don't use often to be stronger. That's only going to make your strength even better.
Yeah.
And I do that with my gymnasts. I mean, vice versa. The gymnast would want to do farmer's carry and dead hangs all day long, but they're not going to want to do heavy squats, and they're not going to want to do heavy lunges. But
Right.
then when you have them do that stuff, their other exercises like bars and beam all get incredibly better at a rate that they wouldn't expect. So
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's pretty cool to see.
yeah, it's fun. And
Yeah.
it's fun too, because like gymnasts especially are super intense on like, I gotta do gymnastics. Like I can't do anything other than
Yeah.
gymnastics to be good at gymnastics. And the minute you pull them out of that environment that they're really comfortable in, and you make them uncomfortable, they
Mhm.
all of a sudden are healthier, and then also they get better at gymnastics. And that's something I learned through personal experience of I was that kid. Like I
Right.
literally only wanted to do gymnastics and nothing else. I was obsessed kind of to an unhealthy degree.
Yeah.
And if I could go back and change anything, it would be throw in the multimodal sports, like do
Yes.
CrossFit on the side, do basketball, do swimming, like
Yeah.
mix it up, and you're going to be a lot healthier. And then you're also going to be better at what it is you want to be good at.
Right. I don't know if you've read Periodization by Tudor DePapa. I think
No, I haven't.
Okay. But he quotes a study in there from Sweden about tennis players who specialize before the age of 15.
Hmm.
And in the study, if you specialize before the age of 15, you basically peak at age 18. And if you specialize after the age of 18, you go on to have a professional career.
Yeah.
So I always like when I think about CrossFit teen athletes now, I'm like, man, like come in, do the open, do your season, and then just go play actual sports. Like
Yeah.
go have fun, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Like there's no pressure. You just get to
yeah,
like have fun.
right. Like you're not winning a scholarship off of this. You're not, you get a little bit of fame and maybe you can set yourself up for some success after like, 18, getting sponsorships and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
it just seems like you might be shortening your career a little bit if you're a little bit more advantageous in the teenage division. But I mean, Haley
Yeah.
Adams did, so
Yeah. I mean, hey, yeah, there are those out there that are kind of proving us wrong, I guess.
yeah, right.
Yep.
So, tell us a little bit more about Repair, Perform, Recover, and what you guys kind of do as a company.
Yeah. So we are a physical therapy based company. Again, we provide kind of the holistic health approach as well. So personal training, performance coaching, nutrition, and then obviously physical therapy.
Yeah,
And yeah, our main mission is just to keep people doing what they want to be doing and what they're passionate about for as long as possible, meaning you're going to be healthy, pain free, moving well. That's something that we really pride ourselves in, is like being able to look out into the gym or watch film of one of our athletes playing or competing and like them looking like they're one of the best movers. Like
yeah.
I'm a nerd where we all are here, but like we really love to see good human movement.
Yeah,
And so that's something we definitely hold high here at RPR. So
for sure.
yeah.
I think like from personal experience, one of the unique things that you guys I think provide to people are like you have your treatment session and then you guys literally take them from the treatment and go right into the gym and like here's your
Mm-hmm.
exercises to help this specifically for this, like go make sure you do these in your warm up. And like
Mm-hmm.
personally that helped me a tremendous amount when I was seeing Lauren when I was still competing. And it helped a lot of our athletes out. You guys sponsored our team this year to,
Yep.
yeah. And like, it was such a drastic difference in between like them coming in with all these aches and pains and then not having them as much anymore. So
Yeah. And it's cool too, because like I said, I was the athlete broken all the time, but didn't really have the access to a healthcare provider that was willing to kind of be, and this isn't to scare people, but like aggressive with treatment.
yeah,
And I don't know if it's something that's just been developed over time or if I've just met the right people who do it, but
yeah.
I've always felt like no one ever did enough. And I never knew why. And it wasn't until meeting Lauren that I learned like how how tough an athlete's brain is.
Yeah.
And then that carryover of the brain down into the muscles that
Yeah.
carry this body through 10,000 thrusters and snatches and wall ball, all the things. And thinking about that and the impact it has on the infrastructure of a human body, and then what that means in terms of injury and how to actually overcome it. So like I remember the first time she ever needled me, I was like, this is it. Like this is what I've been missing my whole life.
Yeah.
And it's because it actually made a difference and no one
Right.
was ever really getting to the root of the problem.
Yeah.
They were more concerned with, I don't even know, getting me in more often for insurance, probably. I
Oh,
don't know.
okay. Yeah.
But I'm always really happy when I don't see somebody super often. Like if
Yeah.
it's not a high level athlete who needs like the aggressive body work, but like someone who's coming in with a knee that hurts when they run. Like if I don't hear anything or see anything from them, I did my job. Like that means
Right.
that they're feeling good and that they hopefully aren't dealing with that same issue anymore. So
Yeah.
and it does take that aggressive approach of literally resetting a muscle. Lauren likes to refer to it as physical therapy surgery, and doing literally whatever we can without actually doing surgery to reset muscles and clear away pain. So
Yeah. Can you dive into that a little bit more about like what exactly resetting a muscle is?
Yeah. So I wish I had my whiteboard right here. I have one over there, but
Yeah.
if you were to draw a picture of your brain, and then there's a line that is just a single nerve and it goes into your muscle. Okay. That's essentially the connection of what makes us move. Okay. We have it all over our body. And our most popular form of it and most effective form of it is trigger point dry needling. And we're able to take an acupuncture needle and go directly into the muscle where there may be an incorrect brain to nerve to muscle loop connection.
Yeah.
Is what I like to think of it. And that happens whenever we do repetitive movements over and over and over again, AKA high level sport. And then it also happens whenever we don't use muscles. So they either get overworked incorrectly or they get underworked incorrectly. Those are kind of the two big categories. Mm-hmm. So then when we take that needle into the muscle that is, we'll call it dysfunctional, it resets that muscle because it's kind of contacting that incorrect junction. So, and then as you know, because you've experienced it, what you feel as a patient is you feel your muscle jolt. And so what I like to tell my patients is that jolt is confirmation that we are on part of the muscle that's causing the problem. And what it's doing, that jolt is kind of resetting that nerve connection and telling the muscle, hey, like either calm down or this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So when you have like, you refer to like repetitive motion or repetitive, like shutting a muscle off, is that more so like you're developing an injury inside of that muscle, or is it just like your body just has to shut it down because it's literally worked to the point of exhaustion, or what's going on there?
So it's actually more of a defense mechanism and also like movement efficiency. So when we see people come in and they're saying that their hip hurts, that's kind of the easiest example, is when we're looking at the hips, all of a sudden you'll see rotations and twisting and different levels. And like, you'll see the hip not be perfectly symmetrical. And that actually happens because your body goes, well, we could just get really strong in the way that he moves all day long, like driving a car or on a phone or on a computer. And so our bodies start to like morph into whatever we do repetitively to protect ourselves and so that we can move efficiently, even though it may be kind of crooked. If you were to look at my hips, I mean, I have my 20-year-old gymnast hips. One is up and forward from 20 years of leaping and hurdling one way. And so what I have to do for my own kind of muscle resetting is do things the opposite way in order to kind of bring everything centered a little bit so that I'm not just moving crooked all the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That was like a big thing that Lauren had kind of showed me, is how like hips can legitimately like rotate into crazy positions. And then
it's nuts.
Then you start to see that kind of reflect over in somebody's pulling pattern off the ground or their squat pattern, and how after tens of thousands of reps of that, like all of a sudden you have an injury of some sort.
Yeah. If I get an athlete in here who does have like a rotated pelvis, but they're not like complaining of hip pain, I will ask them, I'm like, what sport did you play growing up? And most of the time they're telling me, oh, I did swimming. Oh, I did baseball. Oh, I did gymnastics. Like, and most of the time the people who haven't been in a 10,000 hour sport growing up, they don't have as much of a pelvic rotation. That's just what I've noticed.
Yeah. So what are some things that you're doing right now in regards to that, to try and offset some of it for your like younger level gymnasts or soccer players or something like that?
So I like to tell my younger athletes, especially kind of in like the easy for them to understand terms, is think about how many times for gymnasts you do a back handspring. You do a lot of arching. So you do a lot of bending backwards, and they go, oh, I do that a lot. And I go, okay. So as many times as you arch, you need to be hollowed.
Yeah.
So that you are offsetting how much backwards motion you're doing to prevent that directional pattern injury, I guess. You need to be doing enough offloading it forward to kind of offset where you're doing posteriorly. So,
got it.
That looks like a lot of like quad work, a lot of like core tension development. So like classic, like dead bugs, like things like that. I mean, just basic stuff. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. or fancy. It just is like put your body in literally the opposite position of what you train in your sport. So
yeah. So do you incorporate those types of things like into their warm up, cool down? Do you have them doing that like just randomly throughout the day, like 3 times a day, or what does that
yeah.
look like?
So gymnastics practice is funny because it's so long.
Yeah.
So it actually, I feel like is a little bit, I recommend it differently than what I would for like a regular person, like looking for a warm up or a cool down.
Mm-hmm.
If they can, I actually recommend that they start their day of practice with like some serious, intense diaphragmatic breathing.
Okay.
Because most of the time these kids are coming off of school. And so their nervous system is like jacked through the roof because they're probably hungry. They're probably running late. They're probably stressed
Yeah.
about their quiz that they thought they failed. And like, you know, all
Yeah.
the things. And then you expect them to do a 4.5-hour gymnastics practice that goes until 9 o'clock at night. Like,
Right.
no. So I recommend like the breathing reset first and foremost. And
Okay.
then I kind of encourage them sprinkling their physical therapy exercises, whatever I've given to them individually,
Mm-hmm.
kind of throughout practice, because a lot of the times what happens is when a kid is like dealing with an injury, and this is by no means like pointing out any coaches, but like the coaches don't have time to like
Oh yeah, for
say,
sure.
hey, you need to go do this, this, and this. Like,
Yeah.
so I try to make it easier for the coaches by giving the
Yeah.
kids like a very comprehensive like list of these are things you should be doing. And so when you're telling your coach, I can't do vault today because my back hurts, the coach is going to respect that because they trust you. And then
Right.
you're going to go work really hard on all of your injury prevention and physical therapy. So
Got it.
sometimes that looks like they're doing their stuff during an actual event where they like normally would be training. And then they can go to another event that doesn't hurt. So
Yeah.
that's where gymnastics is kind of weird, because like you could have a foot injury and not do three of the events, but then you can still swing bars. Like,
Oh,
so
okay.
it's
Yeah.
kind of weird. Like you can,
Yeah.
I think it's more efficient to like sprinkle it in during their practice because it's so long. And
Totally.
then by the time they're done. They want to get out of there. So I, I try to say like, do it during practice at the end if you
Okay.
can, but if not, go home and get some sleep. So
Yeah, that makes sense. That's something that I've adjusted a little bit like over like the course of my coaching career is like CrossFitters hate to do any sort of movement work. So I try and put it front loaded into the session so at least they're doing something and then they get to do the fun stuff after they hit that stuff.
Yeah.
So
I agree with that. I've heard of somebody, I can't remember who they're being coached by, but they were like, yeah, they make me do all my bodybuilding before I can do a Metcon.
yeah.
Because they wouldn't do it otherwise. They would do the Metcon and be done. Who cares about bodybuilding? Like, everyone should.
Yeah.
Really
Boring stuff
important.
first and you get your reward after.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's cool. So what are some common things that you see with like CrossFitters? So you kind of talked about the hip shifting, like what are some other things that you like kind of see in CrossFit? Does a lot of it have to do with some of the sports that they played prior to CrossFitting? What does that kind of look like?
Yeah, I definitely think that the pelvis stuff is most common, especially when you're getting like someone like me who did a sport for 20 years and it was a asymmetrical sport, meaning one side leading, and now we're under a barbell that is both sides and you have nowhere for your rotations to hide. That's kind of the most common thing I see in terms of like the athlete who did something for a long time and then is coming into weightlifting and CrossFit. But maybe the flip side of that, of someone who's brand new, like to fitness, I think the most common thing I see is shoulder. And most of the time that is due to either lack of mobility or lack of strength. Nature of it is most people new to fitness probably have been sitting a lot and in front of a computer, rounded forward. So now all of a sudden we're asking this person to fully externally rotate their shoulders and receive weight overhead. And like, that is like the most aggressive, like full range of motion movement, very functional, but like really aggressive. And they do it very quickly. And so then their shoulder starts hurting. It's not necessarily injured, but their muscles are starting to have that conversation with them of, hey, I'm developing incorrect movement patterns, fix me before you injure yourself. So, shoulder stuff with like pull-up bar work and snatches and just overhead, I think is probably the next most common thing I see with people
Oh,
new
okay.
to CrossFit. And then you get the knees every now and then, and that is of course related to hips. So
Right.
I had a professor in school one time say that the hips don't lie, and it's very true.
Yeah. It seems like a lot comes from the hips.
A lot does.
Yeah. Is there a big difference between like individuals who are coming in for the first time and competitive CrossFitters? Do you like um does like the wear and tear of competitive CrossFit like make it harder to treat individuals, or?
It makes it different. It is just harder work to treat someone who's been doing it for a long time. Like, I would like to think that in a session where I'm working with someone who's newer to CrossFit, I am not sweating. And then sometimes when I'm in a session with someone who is a competitive CrossFitter and has been doing it for a long time, I'm dripping bullets, like, because
Yeah.
it's hard work. I mean, this is a manual labor job for sure.
Right. Yeah. So is
Yeah.
it like the increase in muscle mass? Like, is their body just holding on to tension way more than the other individual, or?
Yeah, it's more tension. Like, think about every time that you're cycling a barbell,
Mhm.
your nervous system is like being wound up,
Right.
like really, really tight, which is why competitive CrossFitters can cycle a barbell more than someone who's new to
Right.
CrossFit. So yeah, it's just more fascial tension, more muscle tone, tighter joints some of the times too, especially with like our big guys who have tree trunks for legs and and we
Or
got to stretch their
just,
hips.
yeah,
It's very fun.
or just a lot of weight to move in a butterfly pull up.
That too.
Shoulders really love that one.
Oh yeah.
So like on a day-to-day basis in regards to like lowering tension levels for CrossFitters, like I know you talked about the diaphragmatic breathing before. Are there like other things that you would recommend for individuals that will like kind of keep injuries away?
Yeah, I definitely recommend like the pre-workout kind of
Mhm.
like parasympathetic set, we'll call
Yeah.
it. And then post-workout doing a parasympathetic reset. So back to the like you've just been wound up after
Mhm.
however many reps of whatever you just did. It's extremely beneficial to whenever you're done to do what you did before, meaning like reset your breathing, chill the F out. Because most of the time, too, after you're done with a CrossFit workout, especially an intense one, you are like,
Yes.
I mean, even if you're
Yeah.
laying on the floor, you are just spent and your nervous
Right.
system is just coiling up around itself to like survive.
Yeah.
But that's the last thing you want because then your body just holds on to whatever your last rep looked like.
Hmm.
So we have a nice saying here that says, never leave the gym looking like your last rep.
Yeah.
A really easy way to do that. And I actually, for a while, when I first started training competitively, had to do this because I could tell that I was kind of falling into that pattern of
Mhm.
just being wound up all the time. I would put a foam roller next to my workout station. So like if I was rowing that day, I just put a foam roller behind my rower. And then instead of laying on the floor, keeled over dead, I would like crawl to my foam roller. I would grab it and then I would lay on it with my arms out to the side and breathe. Um,
Okay.
so still laying down, still recovering, but like getting into an intentional position of
Yeah.
I'm not dying.
Yeah.
I'm okay. And I'm going to breathe and like bring my heart rate down and also kind of unwind the like forward posture that a lot of the times CrossFitters get into. So
Yeah. So for somebody who doesn't have a lot of time, like what other kind of like tools or tips have you like found? Like obviously that one works pretty well, but it seems like a
yeah,
lot of people like, especially like individuals who are coming in for a 60-minute class, get done with their workout, put their stuff away, and then they're in their car driving somewhere. Like
yeah. I mean, you can get creative and you may look like a weirdo, but you could like do nasal breathing. So if you're going
yeah.
to just be getting straight into the car, have a piece of tape, put it over your mouth and nasal breathe while you drive home. That would probably be the most efficient way to
Mhm.
kind of get that same kind of parasympathetic
Yeah. So what exactly
download.
does that do for
So
individuals?
what nasal breathing does is it allows you to take in more oxygen through your nasal cavity, and it almost forces you to slow down your heart rate, because you have to, like, if you were to close your mouth right now and take in a nasal breath, you have to breathe a lot slower versus you can use your bigger muscle groups to like breathe in and out of your mouth. And that nasal breath it slows the process down. That's the easiest way to kind of paint that picture. Which then tells your nervous system to slow down as well.
Yeah. Okay. So hopefully we'll see a bunch of people driving around in their cars with tape on here.
I know. I'm like, you may look like a fool. Shoot, we have a coach here who he started doing it when he goes to bed, and his wife showed me a picture, and he's literally in bed with tape over his mouth. And he says his HRV has never been better. So
I mean, I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like in several breathing books, is like tape your mouth when you go to bed and just get used to breathing through your nose when you go to bed.
Yep, exactly.
I think I've seen something where it like decreases your, like if you have sleep apnea, like it can decrease your like the number of times you're waking up in a night. It's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. Actually, on my reading list is breath.
Yeah.
I think you said that you read that book. Lauren is reading it right now. So is that coach that I mentioned. And so I'm like, nice. I need to read that.
Yeah.
Pretty sure that's why he's taping his mouth when he goes to bed.
So. Oh, I would not be surprised. I learned about it when I first read Oxygen Advantage by Patrick McCown. I think that's his name. But yeah, he talked about it in there, and I was like, and then Lauren I think had mentioned something about it, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll just try and close my mouth more before I go to bed, not necessarily the tape.
Yeah. And not going to lie, I and my husband can attest to this. I am the worst nasal breather. Random fact about me, I had massive tonsils when I grew up. I didn't get them taken out until 2016. And it was the year I got married. And my husband said, like, I had to get them taken out because it sounded like I was choking when I was sleeping. Oh, wow. So I've always been a mouth breather because I had such massive tonsils. Gotcha. And so now I'm trying to change that. So part of my routine is whenever I stretch, when I'm done, I force myself to nasal breathe, because not going to lie, when the few times I've competed in person, Zach Anderson here, he was my performance coach during that. And he would write in my notes, like, okay, before and after every event, you have to nasal breathe for 5 minutes. And I wouldn't really do it because I couldn't, it was anxiety provoking. So I just never really did it. I would lay there, but
that's was it like pretty life-changing when like you got the tonsils taken out? Like, could you breathe through your nose better? Or
yeah, my husband noticed a pretty significant difference just in terms of like my ease of breathing when I was sleeping. So
wow. Okay.
Yeah,
that's crazy. That's like literally years under your life right there. That's wild.
All good things.
Yeah, for sure. So you did just mention like you are competitive in CrossFit. You did the quarterfinals individually and with team this year, right?
Yes, I did.
Sweet. And then you've competed.
It was a great time.
Yeah. You competed at Fittest as well?
Yeah, I competed at the Fittest Experience in the individual RX division in, I guess that was February of 2020 or January.
Beginning of February, end of January, somewhere around
one of those.
Yeah.
And then and then the year prior, so February of 2019, or no, February of 2020. Fittest Experience was 2021. Time means nothing these days. Right. I did Wadapalooza individually in the intermediate division, which was really fun.
Yeah. Have you found that like being competitive in like CrossFit specifically allows you to treat other CrossFitters better? Or
yeah, I find that it just makes, like, especially for someone who's maybe wanting to train at that next level and maybe they don't understand why they're feeling a certain way. I think it's really valuable when I can affirm what they're feeling. Like, I think sometimes people look at people who are competitive, and can kind of do the higher skill stuff, and I think they have an assumption that we just never hurt. And
is that really, is that for real? Like people?
Yeah. I've definitely worked with people who just think, oh, well, it's easy for you because you never struggle. And I'm like, oh, no. Like, no.
Probably about 3 or 4 years straight, I woke up in pain every morning. So
I look at them and I say, I sometimes have nights where I cannot sleep because I am so sore. Like,
yeah.
where I wake up in the middle of the night and my legs are cramping. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
and so being able to kind of normalize it and be like, no, like we feel the same things, or I feel the same things you
Mm-hmm.
feel. A, I've just done it for a little bit longer. And B, here are some of the tools that I use to help me recover, feel better, gain strength. Like, here are some of the things that I do that I think are beneficial. Why don't you try them? Like, I think that there is so much value to having done what your clients are doing.
For sure.
I tell every person that I've ever needled, I do not needle anywhere where I have never been needled, because I don't know what it feels like. And I don't feel comfortable with putting someone through an experience or recommending exercise or recommending a nutrition, anything. Like, I don't recommend things that I've never done myself.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's real value in that. So
yeah, in experiencing, like being able to relate to the experience that the individual is presenting to you, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So
For sure.
And sometimes what works for me doesn't work for somebody else, but there's at least that value of like, hey, I've at least done this and it has worked for me. So, and I think it could work for you. Let's give it a try. So
what is like your problem solving process? Like when you do try something on someone doesn't necessarily work, like how do you start solving that problem?
That's where it gets tricky, because then you have to dive into what you're not used to. And so I try to ask a lot of questions, like things maybe that they aren't even thinking of. Nutrition, for example, a lot of the times it's not food related. It can actually be more emotional. It can be more life experience. It can be family and your inner circle. And so you have to like be really creative and think, okay, like what else could be going on? I one time had a gymnast that I was working with who literally was not getting better. Like, I was doing everything right, but still no progress. And finally, it just kind of came out of nowhere. But I asked her, I was like, how are you sleeping?
Yeah.
And she said, oh, I don't really sleep. She's like, I stay awake until 2 a.m. studying.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, okay, so your next physical therapy exercise is to go to bed by midnight. And then the next time I see you, it's going to be 11. And then it's going to be 10:30. Like, and that's what we worked on. I mean, I still needled and cupped and stretched because she needed the recovery, but like, just being creative with kind of that whole person experience. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
How often would you say that it's like when people come in with, some sort of nagging injury or some sort of inflammation or something like that, how often would you say it's more lifestyle factors, and does it vary on like the individual? Is it more lifestyle factors for CrossFit, like class goers, more lifestyle factors for younger athletes, CrossFit competitors?
I think it definitely depends. Honestly, the answer to all of this is it depends.
Right.
But it actually, over this last kind of 2 years of pandemic life, more often than not, it's been lifestyle.
Okay.
Which has been super interesting, because prior to that, I think it was more sport driven, just because people were moving more, people were traveling and just spending more time in the gym. Like, you name it, we were doing it before all of this happened. And so it's funny, the first like 6 months of shutdown, we thankfully were able to be open and still treating clients. And we had so many people come in for just these odd things that like I never seen before, like crooked necks because of like sitting at a dining room table.
Really? Like looking at like the rest of the people?
Shoulder pain from doing puzzles all day. Like, I mean, I wish I was making this up, but I'm not. So that's definitely expanded my horizon of like how I talk to people, like
for sure,
asking the right questions of like, hey, what's your work setup like? How many hours are you in a car? Like, I had a client this week, in fact, who kind of dealing with like leg issues with squatting. And I asked him, I'm like, well, how long are you sitting throughout the day? And he did the math and he was like almost 3 hours in a car every day. And so I told him, I was like, that hip stretch, you need to be doing it every day.
Yeah.
He had only been doing it maybe once or twice a week. And I was like, you need to be doing it every single day,
Yeah.
even if it's an
Yeah.
upper body day. Like you've got to stretch your hips
Yeah. Wow.
just because of lifestyle. So
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So you think you kind of see that a little bit more in maybe like the average kind of like gym goer more so than
yeah.
the like competitive or maybe athlete is a good way to say it.
Yeah, I would say kind of the everyday athlete, it's more lifestyle based. And then I like to call it like the 10,000 hour athlete. That can be more like true performance driven, meaning like, okay, well, what does your training look like? So
Mhm.
actually, with a blacklisted athlete I work with, she is working a lot on pushing. And I
Mhm.
had to ask, I was like, well, how are you doing with pulling? I know your coach is programming it, but are you doing
Yeah.
it? And she fessed up and she was like, I haven't really been doing it. Like, well, you got to do it. Like you gotta offset how much you're working on your weakness with also doing the opposite movement. So
Yeah. Yeah.
like that's why
Yeah.
your coach is putting it in your programming. So
Interesting.
yeah. If she's
Right.
listening, she knows who I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it always seems like the athlete is like always looking for a little bit more of a performance boost. And we know that like sleeping and like eating correctly is going to give you those performance boosts. So it always seems like they kind of have, for the most part, those things dialed in. There's obviously like some quote on, I don't even know if outlier is the right word, but like people who are
Yeah.
not doing that stuff and are still really competitive. You're like, how much better could you be?
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's a whole nother. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's like diving in for the competitive person, like other aspects other than just, oh, well, your shoulder hurts. Like, let's look at what are your big goals and
Mhm.
what are the little things that you can be doing here and there to get you there. And that's kind of what I love that we do here, which is that holistic whole person approach
Right,
is
right.
it's sure about needling and scraping and all of that, but also like full person picture. Are you doing everything you can to
Mhm.
be your best? So
Right, right. Yeah. Um, so I have to ask, because I think I still get this question, but like, what do you get more questions about? Do you get more questions about like what do cups do or what do like dry needling? What does that do? Has it
um
switched at all?
yeah, I think I get it both. I
Yeah.
guess it depends of what I'm using. I will say my gymnasts, they first off love cupping, like
Okay.
absolutely love it. But the first, I've been at In Town Stars Gymnastics for about 2 years now, and the first
Yeah.
year of like consistently being there and like doing cupping on these kids, they freaked out. They were like,
Oh, really?
what is that? That's so gross. Like
Yeah.
pointing at it and whatever. And now like they line up for it. They're like, I need cups all over my body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, both are kind of a phenomenon where you just don't really understand what's happening. Even when I get it done personally, I'm like, I know everything about this, but like this is crazy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's a good experience and they're
Yeah.
helpful.
For sure. For sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah, my girlfriend was like totally against it, and I'm like, look, you have to try this. Like, let's just throw, like, your back's hurting, let's just throw some on. Like, no one's gonna see the marks. Like, you can wear a shirt. And now she's like all about it all the time.
Yep.
Like,
I've
fantastic.
lots of people like that.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, so I guess like maybe last little thing we can get into here. For some of these individuals who are competing a little bit younger, like maybe some of your gymnasts or some of your, maybe like some of the CrossFit athletes who are kind of like a little bit more and really into CrossFit and wanting to do
Mhm.
CrossFit. What are some kind of things that you could recommend or they could do to, if they're looking to make this a long-term career, some things that they could do to kind of stave off some of the injury overuse patterns that they might kind of accrue throughout the course of their, fitness or competitive journey, if that makes sense.
Yeah. This made me feel like a curveball out of left field, but probably working with like a mindset coach or
Mhm.
psychology, like really working on being as in tune with yourself as possible, whether
Okay.
you need a coach or not. But like,
Yeah.
I think the more you can really understand what things feel like for you, meaning when your coach asks you how you're feeling, you're not just going to answer every single time with fine.
Yeah. Okay.
And I say that because I was the young athlete who that was my response. My coaches would ask every day, how are you doing? And I would always, even if my right arm was falling off, I would say, fine. And if I could go back in time and change anything as a young athlete, it would be just being aware of how I was feeling and then being honest about it. So that like knowing yourself, I say it all the time for me now, I'm like, it's a know thyself moment of like, yes, I should do this today, or no, I shouldn't. And being okay with that. And that takes a lot of willpower for athletes who want to train at that next level. It's really hard to say no to stuff. But
I mean, especially stuff that you love to do, you know?
Yeah, I know. And so I've told Lauren this before. I'm like, working with my gymnast, sometimes I feel like I'm doing more pain education and psychology than I am physical therapy, because I'm teaching them about how their body is feeling. So I tell them, like, when you feel pain or when you feel achiness and tiredness, like, you have to register certain kinds of pain different ways. So when your coach asks you, does your back hurt? If your back is feeling sharp and shooting and like it's getting worse with every step you take, that is a sign to stop. Like, stop what you're doing now before anything gets worse. But if you're feeling sore, if you're feeling like tired and more achy, like, that's another moment to be honest with your coach and say, hey, I'm feeling these things, but I can still train. Because then as you know, and I know, like, that's feedback for you of how to then give your athlete the best day possible without wrecking themselves. Because young athletes just don't have that brain development, literally. And being guided by somebody to really be in tune with your body and then be honest about it, I think is really, really important for longevity.
For sure. So. Yeah. I think that's definitely a different perspective. It doesn't seem like there are a lot of, at least personally, I don't work with a lot of teen athletes, but that's definitely a different perspective. So it's interesting to kind of bring that to the table and like really educate people on what their body is actually feeling.
When you work with younger athletes, you realize that sometimes, like, when you have them in the room with you and they're telling you something hurts, it's the first time they've ever felt pain. Like, think about that. Like, can you remember the first time you ever felt pain? And you kind of have like that internal, like, what is going on? And sometimes you have to talk people off a cliff. I'll throw my husband under the boat. He's kind of one of those people. He's never had a major injury. And so a lot of the times when he's hurting, he thinks he's broken. And I have to be like, no, you're okay. Sometimes he's broken. And I tell him that, but like, it's that true education of like knowing yourself and knowing what pain signals you need to listen to and what are just guiding points. A really good read that kind of helped shape like what I experienced as a young athlete. And then what I know now and why I'm recommending this is a book called The Gift of Pain. It's by Dr. Paul Brand. And the title speaks for itself. Pain is our guide a lot of the time.
For sure.
It's really important to be in tune with it.
One of the, this is like, I guess, a personal story for when I was like figured pain out a little bit more. Like, I think I was like 19 years old when I was in the Marine Corps. And one of the schools that we were at was, they sat us all down. And they're like, look, there's a difference between an injury and aches and pains. Aches and pains, you can keep going on. An injury is something that you literally cannot keep going on. And they told us a story of this guy that had literally broken his ankle and tried to continue going in this school. And they're like, he got to the point where it was so bad that he had to get med-cept out of the Marine Corps. And like literally like his like hopes and dreams of accomplishing this school were just like gone after that.
Oh so my gosh.
So another kind of like point is, if you don't pay attention to the pain, it can get worse and worse and worse to the point where you're out for long periods of time now. So that was like sorry, that was my personal like experience, like learning about pain a little bit more.
Yeah. My short story on that too is I'll never forget. I was 10 years old. And I remember doing a back handspring just in warm up during practice. And I heard a pop in my elbow and I knew, I was like, I just broke my elbow. Like, there it is. But I had level 8 regionals coming up. And back in the day, level 8 was the first level that you could actually qualify onto your state's regional team. And I was having a really, really good year. Like things were clicking and it was all good. But I broke my elbow and I was like, well, I can keep going. I'll be fine. Most of my skills were with no hands anyway. And so I went on a state meet. I won state meet. I got first place onto the regional team, mission accomplished. And I'm training for regionals and I'm on beam and my arms are over my head and my elbow is bent. And my coach goes, Kelsey, straighten your arm. And I go, it is straight. And she's like, no, it's not. Oh man. And so she made me go to the doctor and it was broken. And my doctor said, it's been broken for 3 months. My mom goes, what? You know it was broken? And I was like, no. And now I can no longer touch my right shoulder. So it's fine. But yeah, so like lesson learned, like you should not push through stuff all of the time. Like don't be an idiot. And even more so just like the day-to-day training grind. Like I know that there are plenty of like other injuries I had that I could have avoided if I would have told my coach, like, I feel terrible today.
Totally.
Like I can't feel my legs. I had a terrible day at school. I didn't sleep. Like being able to like have that level of communication with my coach, I think would have saved me from some really even worse injuries. For
sure. Yeah. And that's kind of like what we try and do a little bit more of is like have those open lines of communication, like what's going on in your life, what's like, what kind of ailments are you kind of like experiencing, and like being able to adjust on the day to day of what that individual is kind of like giving you, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. And that's where I think y'all's services are extremely valuable, where people maybe don't realize they need a coach. But man, I think everybody at some point in their life, no matter what you think your fitness level should be, should have a coach, whether it's like us as a PT or you guys as like CrossFit coach, like everyone needs a coach.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of just learning that you'll get from seeing somebody else's perspective on things is just like, it's invaluable. Like there's nothing you can like replace that with, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I have coaches, like I don't do this alone. I mean, I would not be able to be the person I am without having someone in my corner giving me feedback and telling me how to improve, asking how I'm doing. Like having coaches are very, very important. Even coaches need coaches.
Very true. Very true.
Yep.
Well, cool. What's kind of next on the agenda for you, competition wise, professionally wise?
Professional wise, actually with In Town, they are in the works of a really, really cool expansion project. They're not moving far away, but they are moving down the road into about 4 times the square footage.
Oh, wow.
And I have an office kind of set up and going to be waiting for me there. So RPR is going to grow in kind of the youth side of things, which is really exciting. And then just keep trucking along with everything here. It's been going really well, and it's been really, really cool to see all of our athletes just improve on all levels. So
For sure.
That's work. Yeah. And then competing wise, I'm waiting on Wadapalooza. I don't know. Right. Maybe when we see some dates. I know we know when the open is. But really the only thing I know for sure is I would like to do as well as I can in quarterfinals. So kind of setting all my sights on that. And then if things pop up in here and there, maybe we'll go for it. So yeah,
for sure. Well, TFX just announced their dates, so they're a little
they're going to be at the end of January. So so I've penciled it in. I haven't put it in Sharpie yet, but
for sure. That's sweet.
The open isn't Sharpie, but yeah.
I mean, can't really do anything about that one.
So sadly.
Well, thank you for coming on. I'm sure people will find this podcast very valuable. So we appreciate it.
I hope so. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah. Easiest way is probably Instagram. It's my name _ PT. Pretty easy. Try to check messages as soon as I can. Or you can go to repairperformrecover.com, shoot us an email, or book with us. So that's another easy way to find us.
Sweet. Yeah. If you guys are listening, make sure to give Kelsey a follow. If you guys are in the Atlanta area, you guys do some online stuff too, right?
Yeah, we do. That was actually something we kind of expanded during the pandemic, was our virtual online services. So that can be anything from movement screening, exercise programming. So giving you like comprehensive warm-ups and cool downs based on your movement and what you're doing. And then also nutrition as well. So
yeah, sweet. So if you guys head over to repairperformrecover.com, you guys can check those online services out. If you guys are looking for some solid movements, check Kelsey out on Instagram as far as warm-ups and repair go. And if you guys are listening on iTunes, Spotify, you guys can head over to our YouTube channel, subscribe there, and make sure to give us a follow on Instagram as well, blacklisted.hq. So thanks again, Kelsey, and we'll chat with you later.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kyle.
For sure.